Jiu-jitsu is more popular now than ever, right? You would think so, because most of the public didn't know what it even was until Royce Gracie won the first UFC in 1993. Since then, we've seen a steady increase in popularity, of course driven by Joe Rogan becoming one of the most popular podcasters in the world, but also the UFC becoming mainstream entertainment and grappling cards on pay-per-view, creating professional jiu-jitsu athletes and more opportunities for athletes to entertain the public and make money. So you'd think it's more popular now than it's never been, but it really depends on how you measure it. Jiu-jitsu was hugely popular in America between 1900 and 1906, especially during the latter part of that period. And this is an article from the New York Daily Tribune in 1903 describing jiu-jitsu correctly as a fad. Jiu-jitsu began capturing the public imagination around 1900. You had folks who may or may not have ever trained jiu-jitsu writing books about it, you had newspapers writing about it, and from Alaska to Alabama, more than 24 newspapers declared jiu-jitsu either a fad or a craze. It was super popular entertainment at the time. A huge part of that was the Russo-Japanese War. Russia fought Japan and was widely expected to win. Japan was perceived as smaller, perceived as weaker, but Japan started winning, crediting a lot of that to jiu-jitsu. And this is a story from the 1904 from a newspaper called the Sauk City Herald, which describes a lieutenant named Takeo Hirose throwing a bunch of Russians, and that happened before Japanese jiu-jitsu was described in every newspaper, which by 1904 it was. If you're watching this channel, you almost definitely know that President Theodore Roosevelt trained jiu-jitsu, first taking some classes from John O'Brien, a policeman who learned jiu-jitsu in Nagasaki, and later with Yoshitsugu Yamashita, who was a legend of Kodokan Judo. But here in 1902, when the press reports started circulating about Roosevelt training, that's when the fad kicked off in earnest. If you wanted to watch jiu-jitsu, you had a lot of options, and you wouldn't just see jiu-jitsu. You would see things like the human cork, the ladies race, the 80-foot leap, and fireworks alongside jiu-jitsu. This is from the Honolulu Advertiser around 1904. You might also see comedians, dancers, burlesque troupes, acrobats, and all sorts of other stuff that were not jiu-jitsu, but popular entertainment. More than 24 newspapers wrote front-page limericks about jiu-jitsu. They got so popular, some newspapers even started making limericks responding to other papers' limericks. The Seattle Star even ran a 6-cartoon series every day on the front page during 1905, and the punchline was always the same. You started with somebody reading a book about jiu-jitsu, and then at the end, that person visits horrific violence on someone, in this case, a wife punishing a husband for coming home drunk. But maybe my favorite example of jiu-jitsu's cultural penetration was in Omaha, Nebraska, where a sweet shop, a candy store, started advertising new jiu-jitsu. Come try one for free. And when people showed up, they found it was salted puffed rice that the company had branded as salted jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu even made it into the fashion pages, and not only was jiu-jitsu framed as you can do this exercise to get yourself in good shape, but we're going to use jiu-jitsu techniques for our white sale on the fabrics. No, not that type of fashion, although we should totally bring these types of gis back. In the course of the class and on this channel, we're going to go more in depth on all of these topics, on vaudeville, on jiu-jitsu in newspapers, on challenge matches, on all sorts of performance, and certainly on Roosevelt. But for now, just think about this. Jiu-jitsu might be more popular now than ever, but it might have been more popular 120 years ago than it is now.